How true to the original should a remake be? In 1988, Bionic Commando for the NES was released, and while it never became a classic, it did pretty well. And I really loved it, even though I had to add it to the list of games I played as a kid but never finished. And now we have an accurate remake with Bionic Commando Rearmed, and it stayed very true to the original in a lot of ways, and it innovated in several ways. But one thing it kept was the story. The Federation is trying to take down the evil Empire when Federation forces discover top secret documentation about an albatross, an unfinished ultimate weapon started by the Empire's predecessors, the Bads, that the Empire is trying to rebuild. But they can't complete the project without their leader. So Generalissimo Kilt goes to unfreeze him. First, the Federation sends in Super Joe, because of course that's his name, to stop the Empire, but he goes missing. You are Nathan Rad Spencer, because it's the 80s, so of course that's your name, to rescue Super Joe and destroy the Albatross. Now in the Japanese version, they made the World War II inspiration for the Bads and the leader a little more clear, but in the American version, they tried to be a bit more PC. But the leader still looks like this, and he bears no resemblance to anyone living or dead. Now, the main gimmick of the game is Spencer's bionic arm. You can use it to swing around, grab things, but in the remake, they give it a few more abilities, like you can grab barrels and use them as shields and then throw them as weapons. And just like the original, there's no jump button. You need to use your arm to get around. They also kept the top-down overworld map from the original, which I really love, because it means that the game is non-linear. To get into one area, you may need an item that's in a later area, like an arm upgrade that takes down a wall, or flares so you can see in pitch black. They also have these trucks that sort of move around the map when you move around the map, and if you hit one of them, it goes into this top-down section that you have to clear out so you can move on. And in the original, this is where you could farm continues. Basically, the game starts you off with 2 continues, but you can get more through these top-down levels. There was also a button trick you could do on the original where you get to the game over screen, you just press A and nothing else, and it'll start you over at the beginning of the level. But the remake made that standard. You have lives, but you have infinite continues that'll just start you back at the beginning of the area you're in. Besides things like the map and the live system, the devs actually went to pretty impressive lengths to make this game true to the original. They even reverse engineered the gameplay of the original game to figure out things like how fast you run or fall, or how fast your arm comes out or you swing. They even kept the broken physics that let you swing through barrels. They kept the color scheme, just, improved a little with modern graphics. And they kept the soundtrack, again, remade for modern times, but it's still the original songs. And although they kept a lot of things really true to the original, they also innovated in some ways that were good and some that weren't so good. First off, in the original game, when you started a new level, you had to pick your loadout for weapons, and that's what you had throughout the level. The remake added weapon switching on the fly, which is great because they also added more enemy types that could only be taken down with certain weapons, so you are encouraged to try out all the different weapons, instead of just getting the rocket launcher and sticking with that for the rest of the game like the original. They also added challenge rooms, which I never bothered to look at, but from what I understand, they basically just test your ability to use the arm to its fullest. They also added a couple of hidden passages that I could have sworn the game told me had equipment in them, so I spent about an hour trying to get through one, and either I missed the equipment or I didn't understand what was going on because I got nothing for my effort. Although they kept the sanitized names of the enemies, they still kept the leader looking like Dollar Store Schmadoff Schmittler. Though in the remake, they put a mask over the bottom half of his face, so it's slightly harder to tell who he's supposed to be. And they also added all new boss fights. In the original, the boss fights were basically just a computer you had to shoot, guarded by a different type of enemy after the end of every level. Now, boss fights all have gimmicks that are based around using your arm to beat them. And they kept the communication stations where you can contact your people for information, or you can hack the enemy. And originally, hacking the enemy was just a button press, and occasionally it would set off an alarm that would get you attacked. But now there's an actual hacking mini game that if you fail, the enemy will attack you. And I feel like a lot of modern games have been dumbing down challenges. They have a philosophy where everyone should be able to beat a video game, which I absolutely believe in. But sometimes I think games take it a little too far, especially with puzzles. Devs can be so worried that you won't be able to complete a puzzle that they'll basically just lay out the answer for you. And that's kind of what happens with all of these hacking pieces. They basically tell you how to beat the boss. The original game was hard, and I kind of wish the devs had kept some of that difficulty. The new bosses are pretty interesting, and the way you beat them is fun because you have to figure it out, though some of the bosses repeat. And if you do the hacking minigame, you know exactly how to beat them. The challenge rooms also add some difficulty to the game, except they're entirely optional and they add nothing to the actual main game. The hidden passage was hard to beat, but I didn't get anything for it, so what was the point? And there are some swinging sections towards the end that get a little difficult, especially this one section where I had to swing from light to light, or another one with a bunch of platforms that would drop and then open that you had to get across. But on the other hand, being faithful to the original doesn't mean you have to be static. The new bosses, the new weapon mechanics, the remix soundtrack, they all add to the feel of the original game without betraying its essence. But then it also compromises. Those brand new boss fights that are interesting, they also tell you how to beat them so they're not that hard. Some people might like working on those hidden areas or the challenge rooms, but they don't actually add anything to the game. They just sort of pad the runtime. Whenever you're remaking a game, there's always going to be some trade-off between innovating and staying true to the original. But if you like the original, then you should definitely play this remake. It is faithful when it counts, and a lot of the innovations do make it better. And if you've never played any of these games before, only play this game if you're comfortable with retro games and their mechanics that take some getting used to. When I first loaded the game up, it crashed, and so I went to Steam to try and figure out what was going on. And when I went to the comment section, I noticed one person was calling the game unplayable because it didn't have a jump button, which obviously misses the point of a remake. The original didn't have a jump button because you were supposed to get around using the arm, which some people may think is a way this game should have innovated over the original. But I think that would have lost some of the spirit of the original. Retro games were hard, and when they had a gimmick, they stuck to it. But if a little archaic retro gameplay doesn't scare you off, give this one a shot. See you next time.